How do you handle the stress of being a CEO? That's actually a really good question, and it's a productive question for every single person who aspires to be an entrepreneur or finds himself in a position of power. So we're actually publishing a blog, internal and external, on culture, and I'm writing the foundational, the launching blog post for the blog, and we talk about the values that we have as a company, from integrity to listening and so forth. And I encourage all of you to read that once it's out. We're still working on it. I wrote the first draft, and now people have the luxury of getting out their red pens and reminding me that my prose sometimes leaves something to be desired, but usually I polish it enough. But anyway, the point is that you have to do three things when you're in a position of leadership. First, you have to do the job. So every role that's leadership related, and so CEO, there are three duties of a CEO: sustainable revenue, manage existential risk, and make sure there's a succession plan. So if you ever go away, there's somebody to replace you. It's the only three things you have to do as a CEO. Everything else is in somebody else's job, and you can choose to go into that lane. A lot of CEOs do, like Jobs was kind of a chief product officer and the CEO at the same time. Some CEOs are CTOs. I served in that role for a long time until we hired Romaine. But anyway, you still have to do that. So that's number one. You have to manage those duties that job is incumbent to have. And then second, you have to preserve and protect and grow the culture of the organization that you belong to. Every organization has culture, and it forces you to act and think in certain ways. If you join the U.S. Army, it's a very different culture than if you join Google, which is a very different culture than if you join, pick your favorite not-for-profit organization, UNICEF or something, who knows, something that is, humanitarian. Okay, so all of these things have different types of people, different cultures, different way you interact with people, different boundaries, if you will, different risks and so forth. And you have to be a member of that and focus on the good parts of it and make sure that you are always vigilant against the bad parts of it. And then finally, you have to do all that while not falling apart, because you'll probably be under constant criticism. Some environments are harsher than other environments, and some jobs naturally are just more stressful because you work longer hours and you have to do more difficult things. So the question is, how do you manage that in a way that you don't go crazy? Now, many of you have known me for years because I've been floating around these videos and going to conferences and all these things. And you've seen me from time to time in a good mood, and you've seen me from time to time in very bad moods and very pissed off. You've also seen the effects of trolling on me from time to time, or situations I consider profoundly disrespectful, like the MetaMask incident, for example. So there's been a lot of back and forth there, and there's been a lot of these things. And how do I manage to keep cool and keep with all of it? Well, there are a few things I do. One, I meditate. Mindfulness is great, and there's tons of people like Ron Siegel and the Calm app and other things that basically give you a paint-by-number, step-by-step way of doing that without the metaphysical import. What do I mean by metaphysical import? Is meditation and mindfulness tends to be contaminated with metaphysics. You tend to have this whole, you'll reach enlightenment, inner peace, and be at grace and one with the universe if you do these things. And whether that's true or not, it turns out you can meditate without that goal. You can simply just meditate to recover. It's kind of like saying that your job has a corrosive impact emotionally and a corrosive impact mentally. The longer you do it, the more damage it does to you. So meditation is like lifting weights for your brain. It's like doing things to clear out that junk and get you healthier, to exercise and prevent that damage from becoming permanent or undo damage that was permanent. So meditation, hugely important, hugely important. Second, you have to take the time to take a break. No matter how important things are, a lot of things can be pushed to tomorrow. And lately, I've been spending a lot more time with friends and family. Lately, I've spent a lot of time meditating, just being at the ranch. Today I'm picking radishes. Every morning I go out, have my coffee, sit and watch the sun rise. And I always make sure I catch a sunset with the people I love and care about. These moments don't take a lot of time, but they're incalculably valuable. and you don't get them back if you lose them. So that alone helps tremendously. And third, I think in addition to meditation and exercise and just good old-fashioned living techniques like fasting and so forth that really do help you out, and taking the time to really enjoy your friends and family, you have to be inspired by the work that you do. So the first two techniques allow you to survive a job that's tough that you love. There is nothing in the world that will allow you to survive a job that is tough that you don't love. No one can survive that. A friend of mine wanted to be a surgeon. He thought he wanted to be a surgeon and went and did that and finished residency. 2 years out, he stopped being a surgeon, and now he's doing something else in life because he turned out that he didn't like the job. And so he'd done all the work, went to medical school, went through a 5-year residency program. That's a lot of work. And, 11 years to get to that point. And then he woke up one day and said, I can't do this for 20 years, 30 years. There's nothing I can do to change the nature and dynamics of this job to make it work for me. So he left, and he's never been happier. Lost a lot of weight, skin looks better, healthier, just happy, laughing with friends, doesn't have a care in the world. So that's the final point, is you can do things to keep yourself going, and when it's tough and you love it, but if it's tough and you don't love it, there is nothing you can do in the long term, just like a bad marriage or just like a bad relationship, that will allow you to survive it. Now, if you're the CEO, oftentimes there are reasons why you don't love your job. If you are surrounded by toxic people or a toxic work environment, a toxic culture, if you are surrounded in a toxic industry, the best thing you can do is reform that, even if it means you substantially reduce the short-term profitability of your organization, even if it means you damage the treasury of your organization, you lose key assets or key employees. Because at the end of the day, you'll just be so much more productive. You'll be so much friendlier, nicer, love your life more, that whatever you lose in the short term, whatever your company loses in the short term, it makes it back with a factor of 10 in the back end, in the long term. I had to learn that lesson the hard way. And I got into business with a lot of people that were competent, some cases incompetent. And I thought, well, I can make it work. And I kept doing everything I could to make it work. And literally got to a point where I would stand at the door of my office before I went into the office, because there's sometimes people there I didn't want to talk to. And I would wait a few seconds before I'd open the door, take a deep breath and say, okay, it's time to go to work. I hated my job that much. And eventually we got rid of those people. They retired or moved on, or we had to let them go. And ever since that day, it's gotten a lot better. Life's a lot better. I'm a lot happier. So I suppose that's the fourth hidden point, that you have to love your job, and you have to, no matter if it's hard or not, there are ways to manage the hardness. But if you don't love your job, oftentimes it's because you're in a toxic environment. And so you got to fix that culture, even if that costs you a lot of time, effort, money. It's a first-class citizen with success. There's never been a case in the history of successful companies where a successful company has been successful despite its culture. It's been successful despite having toxic people. These companies never last. They fracture into 1,000 pieces. Because what keeps them together? Why would people want to be loyal? All right, let's see what else you guys got.